Welcome to today's Explainer. If you follow governance in developing nations, you probably hear the exact same excuses for why things break down. It's corruption, or it's political instability, right? Well, today we're looking at a totally different diagnosis. We are diving into the arguments laid out by Papua New Guinea's Governor Allan, and he argues that the real issue isn't just the politics. It's actually a fundamental mechanical failure of the government's operating system itself.
Okay, let's dive right into this diagnosis. Here's how we're breaking it down today. First, diagnosing the real problem. Second, the illusion of instability. Third, who is actually responsible. Fourth, 30 years without monitoring. And finally, fixing a broken system.
All right, Section 1, diagnosing the real problem, symptoms versus disease. To fix a country's governance, you've got to correctly identify the actual disease, rather than just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms. Now, the standard official narrative usually blames political instability when plans fail and services just don't get delivered. The whole idea is that constant changes at the top ruin long-term progress. But Governor Bird, he argues the exact opposite. He asserts that the actual administrative system and its control mechanisms are failing. It's not about political musical chairs at the top, it's the machinery underneath that is completely broken down. Which brings us to Section 2, the illusion of instability. Let's look at the data. Let's see if that official claim of political instability actually holds up when we look at the math. Between 2002 and 2026, Australia had 7 prime ministers, New Zealand had 6. But in that exact same time frame, Papua New Guinea only had 3. 3! The data clearly shows that PNG has actually had far less prime ministerial turnover than its supposedly highly stable neighbors. So, as Bird asks, where exactly is the instability? The evidence strongly suggests the root problem lies somewhere else. I absolutely love the analogy Governor Bird uses here. Think about it. If your car breaks down, you don't just guess what's wrong and start yanking out engine parts, right? No, you hire a qualified mechanic. He argues that adjusting a government structure is the exact same thing. You need actual systemic experts to look at the inputs, the processes, and the outputs. If the system itself is broken, you need people who truly understand the mechanics of governance to diagnose those specific weaknesses, rather than just letting politicians make superficial tweaks. Moving on to Section 3, who is actually responsible? The accountability crisis. Let's explore what happens when processes overlap and no one is uniquely tasked with delivering a result. I want you to really think about this question. Who is actually responsible for the outcome? When public funds vanish into a bureaucratic maze and a project totally fails, who actually takes the fall? Bird is incredibly frustrated over this accountability crisis. When everyone just points fingers at everyone else, nothing gets done, and ultimately, the citizens suffer. Just look at this structural overlap. You've got 4 completely different state entities: the national government, the provincial government, the district development authority, and the local level government. Bird points out that these entities are constantly tripping over each other, trying to deliver the exact same outcomes. It creates massive inefficiencies. I mean, if you have 4 different groups all trying to build the same road or fund the same school without clear boundaries, you're just throwing resources away. Here's a very specific example Bird gives to prove this. Policing. The Constitution clearly says policing responsibilities belong exclusively to the police force, plain and simple. Yet you have the national government, provincial governments, and districts all spending their own money on law and order. It's a complete diffusion of accountability. So if crime spikes, the governor gets blamed in the press, even though constitutionally the police department is the entity actually measured against that outcome. Now, to highlight what efficiency actually looks like when boundaries are clear, Bird points to his own East Sepik provincial budget. A staggering 88% of it goes directly to core service delivery objectives: education, health, and law and order. 88%. That measures their direct input into the things that actually matter most to everyday citizens. But then compare that 88% provincial efficiency with what's happening at the national level. It's a really stark contrast. According to the planning secretary, 80% of the 3rd medium-term development plan budget isn't even spent on its own priorities. Millions are just wasted because local plans simply aren't aligned with national priorities. We're talking about a system where huge sums of money bypass core development entirely. That leads us right into Section 4, 30 years without monitoring, the missing feedback loop. This brings us to what Governor Bird argues is the single most crucial missing element in the government's entire operational system: 30 years. He makes this staggering claim that, to his knowledge, there has been a complete absence of systemic monitoring and evaluation, what we call M&E, in the country for at least 3 decades. The feedback loop, which is a core requirement of any functioning system, literally just does not exist. To bring this abstract concept down to earth, Bird shares a crazy anecdote. He was out visiting a school to put in a water supply, and the headmaster points out this 4-in-1 classroom building that is completely inaccessible. Why? Because the contractor got the contract, took the money, and vanished. And because there is zero systematic monitoring, nobody even bothered to check if the work was done before handing over the final payment. This is the real-world impact of a missing feedback loop on everyday people. And the scale of this control failure? It's mind-blowing. Try to wrap your head around this number, 18,000. Bird points out that 18,000 transactions, representing over 30 billion kina remitted from the country, were actually flagged. 30 billion, and how many were prosecuted? 0. Not a single one. This just proves that the control mechanisms of the system simply do not work. The rules might be there on paper, sure, but in practice, they are completely inactive. Let's head into our final part, Section 5, Fixing a Broken System, the Path Forward. So, the absolutely crucial point is, how do we fix it? How do we cure these deep-rooted administrative diseases? Bird proposes a few clear steps to strip away the duplication and actually enforce accountability. Step 1, clarify constitutional roles so everyone knows exactly who is responsible for what. Step 2, institute block grants and decentralize resources, basically shift the funds out of the capital and push them directly down to the provincial governments. And step 3, reinstate strict monitoring and evaluation inspections. Which brings up a highly practical solution. Bird insists that a system only works if the people at the top manually close that loop. That means an actual inspection group from Port Moresby has to physically travel down to the provinces and districts to verify the outputs. You can't just sit at a desk and rely on written reports that may or may not be accurate. You have to follow the money, physically look at the classrooms, and check the roads. I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. If a system has no feedback loop, can it ever truly be fixed? I mean, superficial political changes at the top really won't matter if the basic mechanisms of accountability and inspection are totally broken at the bottom. Understanding these governance mechanics is absolutely vital for evaluating how your public funds are managed and delivered. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into system failure, and keep questioning how your systems operate.